my main field of research is quite easy. It's the future internet. But the future internet is a broad scope, as a broad field, has many, many topics to be addressed. So my main topic there is to have adaptive and seamless multimedia communication. Adaptive means the system has to adapt to the person, to the devices, and not the devices and the people to the system. And in this scope, there are 4 topics we are addressing in our lab in Darmstadt, and with a lot of researchers there. One is overlay networks. It's like, you know, peer-to-peer networks today, you know, Dropbox. All of these are overlay initiatives. So we are trying to establish and analyze how future overlays will look like. The second topic has to do with network sensors. So there will be many more sensors as we have today in the future, and all of these will be interconnected, maybe in a train, maybe in an airplane, maybe in a car, maybe in a building. So how to interconnect them in a very easy way, yes, and which also allows for privacy and security are topics we are addressing there. And last not least, we need semantics. We need to understand which type of data is being transported. So we have a field of knowledge media where we understand more about semantics of the data. And there is one application layer, application topic we are looking, but also looking for the fundamentals there, which is called serious games, network serious games. And this is whenever you use games, not for the purpose of playing, for the purpose of, for instance, teaching, for the purpose of health, and for other purposes there. So making use of games in different environments. But all of this should serve the main goal of having adaptive multimedia communications and seamless communication for the future internet. Mm-hmm. Well, the future internet and adaptive future internet has a huge set of applications. We are focusing on a few of them in some of the projects. This is more project driven. One is disaster scenarios. So there is a disaster, which means a disaster in a huge area for about 4 or 5 million of inhabitants. And how should people communicate there the first days without an infrastructure? What should be done? So this is something we're going to focus over the next 5 years with 2 initiatives there. Another one is if you look at the cars today, a car is for me an internet node with some wheels. Yes, it sounds a bit different and strange perhaps, but if you look what processing capabilities do new cars have built in, there are very many. So we're looking at cars, and together with providers, with small and medium industries as well as larger industries in the car industry, how what does it mean to have future and communications in a car system itself, inside and with the outside. Another topic is buildings, smart buildings, not one building at home, having a set of buildings which are interconnected by some kind of communication systems. How do they interact? How can you distribute the data there? And so this is also one topic where energy is something to be looked into more detail. And in the area of serious games, for instance, we look in health and the elderly and aging society. So how can we make use of instrumentation, sensors, and supporting rehabilitation in a way which is nice for the people, which is nice for the person. Yes, putting it into some game, for instance, and making use of mobile devices. As a whole, I would say there's plenty of application. Last not least, we're working together with the University of Frankfurt in the area of e-finance, looking at reliable services there for the e-finance industry, and always looking at communication systems. Yes, and I mentioned already, we're looking at overlay networks like peer-to-peer. Can these also be used in the finance industry somewhere in cloud, with cloud systems and so on? Yes, certainly. To describe what happens here is a pleasure for me, as I found a very, let's say, interesting environment, as there are many people working quite near the topics I'm working at. There is specifically one project I've found, I'm looking at more detail, it's called BRAID. It's a project to do with understanding the brain and trying to understand how the brain works in order to build better networking systems of the future. So it might be, we don't know yet, and also the group of Arturo Ascora, who is the principal investigator of this in this project, they don't know exactly what could be found there, which are the similarities in detail, but working together with a set of very well-known research of different universities here in Madrid specifically, I think there will be great results in the next years. Not something to be looked at just for a few months. It's something to be looked on the long term. So it's bio-inspired communications, I would tell it. It's like having the brain looking at an information and communication systems there. Neuroscience are people involved in. So and I think there will be a lot of analogy, especially to adaptation and on the long run, how to adapt something there. And in this environment of Universidad Carlos III de Madrid, I found also not only Arturo Ascora, also Carmen Guerrero, Ruben Cuevas, and Albert Bunch. They are doing interesting research topics, so I think the time to stay here for me for half a year is just the beginning of a long-term collaboration somewhere. And I also have to mention that you have this IMDEA Networks Institute aside, which is co-located to the university and which certainly helps also in the environment of networks a lot. Coming back to the topic I'm looking at here in Madrid at Universidad Carlos III with the Cátedra de Excelencia, I think always to think how to adapt something. The brain is very, very good in adapting to whatever happens. If we have some problem with the brain, if we have some new environment, yes, the brain is perfectly in adapting. And that's something we in communication networks, we do not do it really today. So we need an adaptation on a long range. We need to adapt, build a system which works for a few nodes, let's say for interconnecting 5 computers, but also works for interconnection 10 billions of computers. And the question is how to build something, yes, how to migrate from one to another mechanism, from one to another protocol. We call it the transition. This is something we have envisioned for many years yet, but now we want to understand it using the bio-inspired stuff and the bio-inspired ideas, which I think are on an excellent way, specifically here at the Universidad Carlos III. So I'm very happy to be here. And let me also say that this Cátedra de Excelencia is something I admire the university for having something like this, because it's not something which might not be seen locally very much, but on the worldwide scale with many people, many very knowledgeable people who you are able to invite here. They have talked a lot about it, so it's a great initiative. So I'm proud to be one of them. Thank you very much.